Well, good morning. Welcome back to the broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Thursday, October 21st, 2021. And our top story today, watch your language. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. And joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Greg Jenkins. He's head of institutional defined contribution for Invesco. Greg, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Good to see you, Jeff, and great to be on today.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you. And we're going to be talking about some research that you and the Invesco team did around language. And I have to start off asking you, Greg, why is language important when it comes to talking about retirement and savings and retirement income and all the things around retirement?
Yeah, we think that engagement is the key to the success of any financial benefits program or any retirement program. And language is very powerful. And when participants feel confident and positive, they tend to make good decisions. When they're confused or language makes them feel bad, they're more likely to shut down or make bad decisions. And as these financial benefits get more and more complex, as we start adding in retirement income and emergency savings and even student loan debt repayment, it's more and more critical that we get the language right and that we help participants make the best decisions possible.
So I have to follow up with that, Greg. I mean, have we blown it as an industry, or is this just part of the natural evolution? Because you mentioned, I mean, these benefits are getting more and more complex. There's a lot of things that go into them. So are we doing a good job as an industry?
Well, the industry's got a long way to go. We've noticed things have gotten better. We've been doing this research for about 10 years, and part of that is looking at actual language that's in materials, and we find that they are getting better. But we've developed 4 key principles that anyone can use in order to increase the effectiveness of their communications. And it's real simple. It's 4 P's: positive, plausible, plain English, and personal. So on positive, it's about inspiring and supportive messages, and always lead with that. We find that how you start a communication is really important. Secondly, plausible. Keep things realistic. Don't expect participants to predict the future or know what their retirement expenses will be 20 years down the line. Think in terms of small steps. In terms of plain English, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. It's about the jargon, and the jargon we use in our industry does not work with participants. And then lastly is personal, probably the most powerful of the 4. Whenever you can personalize a message, it'll have a greater impact. So using words like you and your, and not talking about retirement and investments in the abstract. And we find those, if you follow these 4 principles, you can very easily change the impact of any communication.
Well, Greg, it's not what you say, it's actually what you hear. You mentioned it before. In the retirement industry, we've got jargon, we've got beta, alpha, risk. There's a lot that's going out there. How do you break down that whole piece of, okay, it's not just what you say, it's how you deliver it to people?
Yeah, well, you touched on it earlier. You asked, has the industry blown it? And if we've committed any sin, this is it. The jargon we use with each other does not connect with participants. And we find that again and again in our research. And the word I like to pick on the most is glide path, because it's everywhere in target date communications. But we've been testing hundreds of phrases and words over more than 10 years. And it is one of the most despised words we have ever tested. It is not understood by anyone. One of those synthetic words that we've made up in this industry, and we just expect people to know what it means. Another big loser is institutional. That's another word that is really confusing to people, and we've seen that in focus groups.
Yeah, when I think of glide path, I'm thinking about, remember those planes that you made out of like construction cardboard and you just throw it and it would just kind of do this? That's what I think about glide path. But I have to say, Greg, as an industry, we use a lot of complex terminology. And if I'm a participant, if I'm an individual, I'm a smart person. I could be a doctor, a lawyer, I could be a technician, an electrical engineer. Being able to understand that terminology, we've created our own language that actually can work against retirement savings.
That's exactly right. We found in focus groups, even among highly educated people, the jargon in our industry is not well understood. What's interesting too is that as much as the general public doesn't like jargon, it's despised even more by women than men. And so you can actually be blowing it on two levels. You're losing engagement with women at the same time as you're demoralizing everyone with the jargon in your materials. And it's funny, we had one client compare it to pulling weeds in the garden. And they said that they had gone back and after, going through a workshop with us, they had removed much of the jargon in their materials, but it just kept creeping back in. And so every so often they have to go in and identify some of these words and replace them with plain English.
Yeah, and now that I think about it, that is a really great analogy, because those weeds, no matter what you do, you can have the best garden, the best golf course, whatever, they're going to keep creeping in. And you have to, with any communication, Greg, you got to keep refining it. It's not a static thing, it's a dynamic thing. I think that's what your research here is basically saying.
That's right. We found that with communications, it's never a one and done. It's always a long-term process, definitely more of a marathon than a sprint. And it is an evolving process.
Yeah. Well, Greg, I need to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk to Greg about jump-starting the retirement income conversation and how to improve the employer and employee communication. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. We're talking this morning with Greg Jenkins of Invesco. Greg, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Absolutely.
And we're talking about language. Language really a really important part of communicating benefits. And Greg, I have to say, been in the industry for a long time, the fund lineup, the investments, the different tiers, that can be a source of great confusion differentiating between types of investments. How do we go about demystifying the fund lineup in a retirement plan?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jeff. And we have researched investment menus, and it's hard because there's a lot of different things going on. But we found three things that are helpful. Number one, limit the number of choices. And I know that sounds obvious, but it's amazing how many plans we look at that still have so many investment options. And we found in focus groups, it's just really difficult for people to make decisions. And I know there's a lot of academic work to back this up, and people can find it pretty easily by looking online. But it's the choice architecture area is a fascinating part of behavioral finance. Secondly, categorizing investments really helps. You can take a fairly complex menu. If you categorize it and frame it correctly, participants will have no trouble with it. And we've tested different methods. But one thing that definitely works is using descriptors around your investment categories. So you may have one group of target date funds, another group of maybe target risk funds or white label funds, and then lastly, you'll have your single asset class options. And we found that in our focus groups and in our online surveys that the classic "do it for me, do it with me, do it myself" performs very well. And definitely plain English descriptors will help. The worst by far is the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 without additional information. It's funny, we had participants thinking that tier 1 meant it was the best group of investments to work with. Lastly, target date funds. Make sure you're explaining target date funds and don't take that for granted. We found that many people don't know what target date funds are. They don't understand the risk level involved. They don't understand the diversification, and are confused about whether they need to combine it with additional options. So make sure you're taking the time to explain how target date funds work. And you'll notice earlier I didn't use the word core menu. It's funny, this is kind of an American thing. You look around the world at other DC plans in Australia and the UK, and they use different terms like DIY options or single asset class options. We found the word core is a very magnetic, appealing word. You want to be careful you're not actually drawing participants into making their own single fund decisions when they're better off or they would be better served by a target date fund.
That language, very, very important. Greg, how important is control to individuals, to participants?
Yeah, it's a good question. Control is a really interesting concept. It's a psychological concept with participants. And I think this is also an American thing too in many ways. Participants want the perception of control. So what do I mean by that? Well, we've asked participants how many times they look at their account, how many times they make changes. And it's funny, we've done this again and again, and we find the numbers are always higher than what is reported by the record keepers. So it's really this perception of control. Participants want to have choices. They want the ability to move money when they want, to look at their balance when they want, even if they don't do that. And this really becomes important with retirement income because retirement income is a little more complex and it's going to involve some choices. And you want to make sure that you're promoting the flexibility of your retirement income program and that people don't feel that they're making permanent decisions that they can't get out of, or they're having to put all their money in the all or none proposition. So with retirement income, language becomes even more important.
Greg, let's talk about fees. We have lived through the Department of Labor fee disclosure rules. I think that came out in 2012. How do you communicate? And for the audience, that was a huge disclosure that was supposed to explain what the fees associated with a retirement plan are. So how do you communicate the fees that you're paying if you're a participant or participants paying?
Yeah, we've done a lot of work in the area of fees, and it's fascinating. And the first problem is that the word fees itself has a really bad history. When people hear the word fees, they think of their cell phone bill, their utility bill, baggage fees at the airport. And what's interesting is when it comes to financial benefits, we find that participants feel like the word fees is something additional. It's above and beyond the cost of something. But the word cost is always a better word to use than fees. We find that everyone knows that benefits cost something. So you're okay talking about costs, and you're okay talking about lowering fees. But when you can avoid it, be careful about throwing the word fees out there, because people will assume the worst if you don't.
Yeah, I think of fees. I think of my cell phone bill. I think about extra additional fees when I order more rice at the Chinese restaurant. It has a negative connotation. Greg,
if I can just follow up on that for a second, Jeff.
Yeah.
Another misconception is that that people are looking for the lowest cost plan possible. And what we found is that really isn't true. When it comes to benefits, and our research partner, Ms. Lansky, tells us that they've observed this in the healthcare industry as well. When it comes to benefits, people are looking for the most efficient cost or the best value. So it doesn't come down to absolute low cost. And I'll say another thing on fees: make sure that plan sponsors should make sure they're promoting the value of their plan. So the fact that they're negotiating fees or lower fees on behalf of participants. We find that this statement alone is very powerful with participants.
Greg, I want to conclude by thanking you, but also saying, this is great research language, really important in business, but also when it comes to benefits. Invesco is well known in the industry for its research around language and defined contribution. And I have to ask, maybe you can spill the beans a little bit. I don't want to get you in trouble with management, but what do you think? What are you thinking about doing in terms of future research? What can we expect from the Invesco team going forward?
Yeah, we are working on a new body of research, and it's behavioral research, digging deeper into retirement income. And so we've scratched the surface on retirement income with language, and we're looking more into fees, as we just talked about, and also how to structure these benefits and talk about them in a way that will make participants most receptive, because we feel like retirement income, adoption is going to be the key, because these programs are getting better and better. But if participants aren't using them, then we're really not going to move the needle in terms of outcomes. So we're really excited about this research. We're finding a couple of hints. We're finding that again, with fees, a lot of sensitivity about retirement income and fees, and just slight changes in language can make a huge difference in how these benefits are perceived. So that's just one tidbit, but there's a lot more to come, and we're hoping to release some of that research in early 2022.
Well, I can't wait to see the research, and I can't wait for the trailer. It sounds really exciting. Greg Jenkins, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thanks, Jeff. It was great to be on.
That wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. We're back again tomorrow. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited, and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.